As usual, I'll read through the items that either have been administratively approved or that have been approved by the Planning Commission that constitute our consent agenda, and then we will vote on those as a block unless somebody wants to pull one off to speak to it specifically. RS 2012-424, a resolution by Johnson, Matthews, and Gilmore authorizing the Director of Public Property to exercise an option to purchase real property for use as a park. And that was administratively approved on 8/22. BL 2012-242, sponsors Langster, Matthews, and Potts, authorizing the acquisition of right-of-way easements and property rights for purposes of Public Works Department project number 2011 R2, Jefferson Street intersection improvements for Jefferson Street at 28th Avenue, Ed Temple Boulevard, and Jefferson Street at 21st Avenue North. That was administratively approved on 7/24. BL 2012-243, sponsors Matthew and Potts, an ordinance authorizing the acquisition of right-of-way easements and property rights for purposes of Public Works Department project number 2012 R2, White Bridge Pike Sidewalk Bikeway Improvement. Administrative approval on 8/1. BL 2012-251, sponsor is Dowell and Matthews, an ordinance approving a facilities use agreement between Metropolitan Public Schools and Nashville State Community College. There's a letter to approve that's currently under review. Is there any update on that?
Yeah, at this point,
it has not been approved. Okay, so we will hold that back then. BL 2012-242. Sponsor is Gilmore and Matthews, an ordinance approving Metropolitan Government to abandon 215 feet of sanitary sewer main and easements to accept 590 feet of relocated sanitary sewer on properties located at 1600 Rosa Parks Boulevard and Rosa L. Parks Boulevard unnumbered. Administrative approval on 7/17. BL 2012-193, sponsor is Pride Moore, an ordinance to amend Title 17 of the zoning ordinance by changing from CS to MUL zoning for property located at 265 Old Hickory Boulevard. That was approved by the Planning Commission 8-0 on 5/24. BL 2012-212, sponsor is Johnson. Could somebody step out and ask Council Lady Johnson to come into the chamber? I know she's here. I saw her. Sponsor is Johnson, an ordinance to amend Title 17 of the zoning ordinance by amending a portion of the Nashboro Village Plan Unit Development for a portion of property located at 171 Bell Road, zoned R10, to promote residential uses not to exceed 100 units, consistent with the scale of development along Bell Road, where a 100-unit, 5-story building was previously approved. That was that was approved by the Planning Commission 8-0 with conditions on 8/23. BL 2012-229, sponsor Johnson and Evans, an ordinance amending Section 1740-740, Title 17 of the zoning regulations to approve a waiver of the zoning application fee for applications filed by members of council in response to the Planning Commission's determination that a planned unit development district is inactive after conducting a periodic review. And the Planning Commission did not take action on this because it deals with matters of council prerogative to set fees, so there was no vote taken on this particular item. BL 2012-230, sponsor is Dowell. Haven't seen Council Lady Dowell, and I don't have a letter, so we'll move that one to the Hill. BL 2012-231, sponsor is Dowell. BL 2012-232, sponsor is Claiborne, An ordinance to amend Title 17 of the zoning ordinance by changing from R10 to CS zoning for properties located at 2721 Shacklet Drive and at 555, 559, and 561 Upshaw Drive. That was approved by the Commission by a vote of 8-0 on 6/28. Bill 2012-233. Sponsor is Baker. An ordinance to amend Title 17 of the zoning ordinance by changing from CS to SP district for property located at 6115 Charlotte Pike to permit automobile sales used, automobile repair, and all other uses permitted by the MUL district. That was approved with conditions, disapproved without conditions by the Planning Commission by a vote of 6-4, 2 against. Bill 2012-234. Sponsor is Todd. An ordinance to amend Title 17 of the zoning ordinance by changing from RM20 to SP zoning for property located at 2215 Abbott Market Road to permit up to 90 multi-unit family units and an associated parking deck. And that was approved by the Commission 8-0 with conditions on 7/26. So those are the items that are on our consent agenda. Are there any questions on any of those? If not, do I have a motion to approve? All right, motion made to approve and seconded. Those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda passes. All right, we'll go back and pick up BL 2012-194. Sponsor is Scott Davis. An ordinance to amend Title 17 of the zoning ordinance by changing from IWD to SP zoning for properties located at 2050 Lucas Lane and at Lucas Lane unnumbered to permit scrap operation, retail, and all other uses permitted by the IWD zoning district. This was disapproved on 6/14 by a vote of 6-2 by the Commission. Councilman Davis, you're the sponsor. Do you have remarks you want to make?
Thank you, Mr. President. Briefly, what I would like to do is just make some comments to continue my support of this bill. I am submitting 2 amendments that just are housekeeping amendments that clean up the bill, limiting the use to only that certain use. It's going to be an SP, and it's going to forbid any other industrial uses there besides the one for the company LKQ. More importantly, we're going to limit the operation hours of the business so it's more conducive to the neighborhood's needs. Also, furthermore, I'd like to submit, and we've already received strong support from my community and also support of the Shady Hills community that's going to be adjacent, and it's the closest residential facility to that area. And I urge my fellow colleagues, please vote for this so we can move this through and make a better living space for the folks at the Shady Hills community. Thank you.
Okay. I just say to you as a member of the Commission, even this is the only meeting of the Commission that I've missed since I've been representing the Council on the Planning Commission. I've gone back and looked through the minutes of that meeting and talked to some of the commissioners that were there. And it's my impression that part of the discussion that day revolved around some misunderstanding of exactly where this property was, that it was more related directly to Dickerson Road and would have a greater impact on the Trinity Lane I-65 interchange for some reason. I just don't think that the Commission was fully aware of all the issues at the point where they voted, but I wasn't there, so I can't say for sure. Any other discussion? Councilman Holloman.
Thank you, Mr. Claiborne. I do want to make one comment. I have, I guess, a question for the sponsor, which is that as I have seen, most of the response that we've received on this issue has been in favor of the rezone. The one concern I have, though, is that we do have a community planning process and a community plan, and I am always concerned when we move legislation in this room that is, one, contrary to the express will of the community plan, and two, doesn't have the approval approval of the Planning Commission. So could you speak to that? I mean, typically, at least in my district, I try to ask the developer or whoever's seeking to accomplish the project to go and seek a plan amendment and not just a rezone. So if you would speak to that, I would appreciate it.
So, okay.
Yep.
When looking at a community plan calls for mixed-use housing and mixed-use development on that lot. 20 years ago, the lot was filled with coal ash, and it has a cliff. It's zoned for 30 acres of that use. 15 of that, you can't even put anything on because you have a cliff there, which at the time, a lot of the planners did not know that there was a cliff there. Also, because you have to go to the site to see, wow, there's a cliff there. So we can't build anything on that 15 acres. The other 15 was a coal ash fill from 20 years ago from the thermal plant. And if you notice, I was talking to the engineer, when you have a bunch of ash and you don't mix it with cement, it's like you're standing on sand. And so imagine, maybe you have a young child like myself, your kid can stand on a pile of sand and it doesn't move, but if a full-grown adult stands on it, it starts to shift and move, and things like this happen. And that's one of the reasons why this land is not stable for that sort of development. And when the community plan was done, the folks I've talked to that have been a part of it, they did not know where Lucas Lane was, or this was the site where Metro, I won't say Metro, I don't know who it was, but when some organization took truckloads and truckloads of coal ash and just dumped it in this land over here. So a lot of information was not out there. And I believe we were looking for an amendment to the plan to allow this, but considering the circumstances, they denied it, with the confusion of, is this on Dickerson? Well, Lucas is not on Dickerson. It's behind the Love's truck stop, which is not on Dickerson at all. It's off of Trinity. And being behind there, no one really knew, Councilman, where this location was or how messed up the land was. Once people went up there, they saw that, hey, they're right, this is not going to support multi-use development on this site. And these are one of those circumstances where I wish I could have just bust all the planning over there to say, listen, let's stand here, let's see what we can do, and this is why this won't support that. And the mobile home community, which is in support of this, is in a violation of the community plan because the plan doesn't call for any of that use over there too. So the whole area really is not making excuses in violation. I hope I answered your question.
Any other questions? Ready for the vote? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion to pass and a second.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Please show me one not voting, please.
Okay. So we have 9 for, 1 opposed, or 1 not voting. All right, BL 2012-215 or 251 is the ordinance approving a facilities use agreement between Metropolitan Public Schools and the Nashville State Community College. This is the item that is currently under review by the planning staff. In cases like this in the past, we have deferred any decision as a committee until we have input from the either the Planning Commission or from the planning staff. So we can discuss this. We have folks from the planning staff here, or I would entertain a motion to defer action on this. Okay. Okay, gotcha.
There's actually a...
Okay.
This is actually a time-sensitive matter in order to ratify. It's just a short-term use agreement through the end of the year, and the agreement was not prepared in time to get it to planning ahead of time of it before it was filed. So, I mean, the committee can certainly defer, but it's in the school's best interest if this could move forward. There's no cost to the schools. The state's letting them use this facility for free.
Okay. Any comments from planning staff?
We can work with the other departments tomorrow to see if they can give us their recommendations prior to the meeting tomorrow. But at this point, as of this afternoon, we hadn't had responses from everyone yet. So to my knowledge, it has not been approved at this point. But we can work with them tomorrow and see if they can give us responses and see if there can be an approval before meeting time tomorrow.
Council Lady Bennett?
Would it assist to defer one meeting? You said it's time sensitive, John, so is one meeting deferral going to hurt them?
No, because we're basically ratifying the agreement. I mean, they're already in the facility. They had to get in September 1st in order to be able to use it. And since there was no cost involved, at the time, no one really even thought that council approval was necessary. And so that's kind of I mean, it's not a true lease in the sense that you have a normal lease of property. It's just a use of this small section of the building for a few months.
Councilman Bednick?
If they are already using the building, I guess I assume that they did the due diligence to check that it met planning. So I suppose that the planning review is probably going to be a formality. Am I correct? I'm asking the planning.
Okay, he addressed that to you.
Yeah, I just can't say. I'm not familiar enough with it yet at this point because we haven't had very long to look at it.
But if they were in violation, they would be kicked out right now. They wouldn't be allowed to use the building by codes.
Part of the Nashville State building at Hickory Hollow, the community college
Yeah,
space.
I mean, I don't want to speculate, but I would imagine that there's probably not going to be major issues with this mandatory referral. But until we look at it, I can't tell you what our recommendation is at this point.
Well, with all due respect to the chair, I think we should approve it. I suspect that somebody did review, or they wouldn't be allowed to be using the building at all if they're using it already. They need to get a permit to.
Well, I think based on what Mr. Cooper said, that they entered into this without the understanding that it had to go through this process. Is that
Right. I mean, it's the. This is in the new Nashville State Community College facility at Hickory Hollow, so it's part of that space which is already permitted. So it's being used for school purposes as that building was intended. This is just to bridge the gap between the time that the permanent space in the mall, I guess in the old JCPenney building, is complete. So it's just it was to allow the school to go ahead and open on time, with the understanding that they were moving into the permanent facility January 1st.
But they're not saying, okay, I don't want to start double guessing codes, but I'm pretty sure the fire marshal would close the place if the building wasn't permitted to be used as such. So I guess I'm just trying to say, I don't think that we'll be in trouble if we were to do that.
are you making a motion?
Yes, I'm making a motion that we approve.
All right. Is there a second? All right. Motion made and seconded. Those in favor? Those opposed? Motion passes. All right. BL 2012-195. Sponsor Allen Gilmore and Langster, an ordinance to amend Title 17 of the zoning ordinance by changing from R6, RM20, RM40, SP, MUL, MUG, MUI, OR20, ORI, CL, CS, CF, IWD, and IR to MULA, MUGA, MUIA, and ORIA zoning for various properties in Midtown between I-40 and I-440. This was approved with amendments by the Commission on 7/26 by a vote of 6-4, 2 against. And we do have a substitute bill.
Chairman, if I may, I believe it was 6 in favor and 2 abstaining.
Okay. All right. 6 in favor and 2 abstentions. All right. Thank you. Council-Lady Allen, do you want to explain the substitute?
Yes, there's a substitute. Based on concerns that were issued about historic preservation and design guidelines, we have worked with planning staff and historic staff and have made some modifications to that. The most important ones are that we've pulled out a number of National Register and National Register eligible properties from the upzoning. Those were areas that were identified by the historic staff, as well as some worthy of conservation districts that they identified. Also, language has been added to the bill that calls for the creation of an urban design overlay, as well as some tools for historic preservation using transfer development rights. We've requested that those be completed by December of 2013. That language is in the bill, and planning has also submitted a letter to me committing their resources to that. That has been an effort to address the concerns. I know many of you have received a number of emails from citizens who are concerned about design guidelines and historic preservation. We are hopeful that this can put those things in place and that the developers will come to the table as that happens. I am confident in the Planning Commission and the planning staff. They have committed their resources. I'm waiting to hear from the development community that they will likewise show up. So I believe this is a good step in the right direction. I absolutely believe that this is a good thing for Midtown, and I would ask that we move forward with this, with the assumption that the development community is going to step up and come to the plate.
All right. Councilman Holloman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Sponsor Allen. Many of you are aware of the emails that we've received over the weekend, and a lot of that was initiated by my conversation with my constituents. I am not a sponsor of this bill. This is not my district, but much of my district is immediately adjacent to the area that's being proposed for upzoning. I have the entire west end corridor from 440 to White Bridge Road, which is immediately adjacent to the west end part of this proposal. I also have the entire Charlotte corridor from 440 to White Bridge Road, which again on the Sylvan Heights, Sylvan Park side is immediately adjacent to this. So when you rezone 450 acres of property, it's going to affect my neighborhoods, and that's a lot of who you've heard from. You've also heard from some people in Council-Lady Allen's district and some people from around the city. My fundamental difference with what Council-Lady Allen wants to do is really procedural more than substantive. I think we agree that we need design guidelines for this area. We need mechanisms in place to preserve the historic structures in this area, of which there are more than 24 that are individually National Register eligible and several dozen more that are deemed by the Historic Commission as worthy of conservation. So there really is a critical mass of historic structures in this area that I think we need to be thoughtful about if we want this area to be economically viable and to remain culturally significant. I think that we need to be sure that the way in which it develops, as Rick Bernhardt's emails always say, are a step towards making it better and not a step away from making it better. That's what I want to see. I think that's what Council-Lady Allen wants to see. What I think we fundamentally disagree upon is how much ability we will have and the response and reaction that we'll get from developers after we give them the entitlements. Once we give them the additional entitlements, frankly, their incentive to come and agree to other guidelines is dramatically reduced. And so what I have proposed to Council Lady Allen, what I would ask of you here is that we simply defer granting the additional FAR, floor area ratio, which is essentially the height, the high-rise infill, until we get the accompanying design guidelines and historic preservation mechanisms in place. I will say to you that I recommended that we do this all together at once. I don't want to see us take any more time than we have to. I asked the Planning Department in May to take the route of doing both a UDO that addressed design guidelines and historic preservation at the same time that we considered this bill. They chose, and the sponsors chose, not to go that route. I think you've seen from the community that they would like to see us ask for that route to be taken. I think it's fair, I think it's reasonable, and frankly, in the end, I think it's where Council Lady Allen wants to go, but I think we as a body are in a lot better position if we take both those actions together. So with that, I think there are a couple of different options. One is that I have an amendment that's also on your agenda that would simply carve out the portions of this rezoning that add FAR. It's a significant amount. It's about, I'm not going to guess, but I'm going to say maybe around a third of the properties. The other properties are simply moving to an A version, which is a more pedestrian-oriented, up to the sidewalk, build to line development pattern. I don't see those as significant, but the ones that are itemized in the amendment, those are the properties that are getting some significant level of additional FAR as part of this rezoning. So one option is to carve them out entirely. Another option is to simply just defer the bill until the UDO catches up. And the third option that I actually think is the best option, and something that Council Lady Allen and I have discussed, but would require us having a one-meeting deferral to come back, is to simply laterally rezone these so that you do change from the suburban parking in the front, rear of lot type of development to an up on the sidewalk development, but you don't add the FAR, if that's clear. And that's something that we could do with a one-meeting deferral, come back, do that, and then reserve the FAR additions for a later time when we get the design guidelines in place. So with that, I think I'd ask for discussion before I move my amendment.
Councilman Bedney.
Thank you, Chair. Years ago, I helped on the plan of Nashville. I mean, a team of architects, we were tasked with working on that corridor, actually, and we were the ones that, one of the many people that understood the importance of increasing the density of that part of the city. Having said that, I haven't been committed to improving the density of the city. I just think that there is a need here to pause and to delay, to do a one-meeting review of this issue to make sure that all the people that have questions about it maybe can come together and find a way to do this that includes more people in the decision-making process. Many of the people that email me are professionals in the design field, people that understand how the city is built, and having, I mean, not that I actually respect architects more than other people. I don't want to show bias here, but I think it just speaks to the issue that we are having people in the profession that are asking for a delay. So even though I'm strongly in support of higher density and I applaud what they're trying to do, I just think that it will be beneficial to wait for a meeting and to postpone this for one meeting. Thank you.
Council Lady Langster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know why my button wouldn't come on, but thank you for recognizing me. I have a statement I want to read. I am in very strong opposition to Councilman Howellman's amendment to remove these properties from the Midtown zoning bill. A large majority of these properties are in my district, District 21, and I was not consulted prior to the amendment being written, talked about, or discussed before it was distributed to this council. None of the properties are in Councilman Holloman's district. Let me repeat that. None of the properties. I have the majority of the Midtown properties. I think it was only due to respect out of me that he would have brought this amendment to me, even if it was late as this weekend, which he did not. The planning department, Councilmember Allen has spent many, many long hours at the table, at meetings, at discussion with neighborhood groups, working with the community to develop the Midtown Community Plan, which resulted in the filing of this zoning bill. Attempting to remove these properties at the very last minute is neither good planning nor good government, or out of respect to me. I ask you to please vote against this amendment. Thank you.
Councilman Westerholm.
I guess I'll be here. Thank you. I had a quick question from the planning department. Could you give us a little bit of information about the process as it's currently laid out in Berkeley, Council Lady Allen's substitute here, as far as that process would give us the guidelines and the framework for establishing a UDO as this moves forward?
Well, the way that when we met with Council Lady Allen and she voiced her concerns about the fact that there are no UDOs proposed in this legislation, is that we first started with the community plan, and the community plan speaks to the necessity for some UDOs in areas within Midtown. And she explained that wasn't her only concern, that her concern was also in a way that dealt with more detailed guidelines for some of the areas where the development rights are increasing. And so that's the target for the UDO, is to both meet some of the goals of the community plan that are spelled out there, as well as some of the more detailed design guidelines that Council Lady Allen has pointed out. And we simply pointed out that UDOs like that need to happen through meetings with the community, bringing in stakeholders, whether that be property owners or developers, and community groups within the area, and bring them in and talk about what the details of those design guidelines should be, as well as whether or not the community plan, the guidelines that are set out in the community plans that are the UDOs that are set out in the community plan should be included in the same UDOs or maybe separate ones. But those are discussions that we want to have moving forward, as well as trying to look at TDRs that will be successful in the area to address some of the concerns that Councilman Holloman was talking about in protecting some of the historic structures in the area, possibly trying to increase workforce housing development in the area, and some other goals that we have that we think are appropriate for Midtown. But that will happen through community meetings, the different stakeholders being at the same table, sitting down, working with language that we think will both work for property owners, the community, the planning department, and this council as well. And we simply set a goal for December, because it's been my experience that if you don't set a deadline on something, then it doesn't happen usually. So we agreed that would set a goal that we could move towards, so that we've got a sort of bright line that keeps everybody moving forward.
Is there any, I guess, disadvantage to using this procedure rather than a procedure that Councilman Holloman would prefer?
Well, I would only point out that going forward now with this legislation will go ahead and give us the guidelines that we would like to see in Midtown, that deal with a lot of the things that Councilman Holloman was talking about as far as producing a more walkable community. The recent zoning designations, the mixed-use developments, the alternative mixed-use developments that are proposed for this area will push the buildings forward, we'll create wider sidewalks, we'll move the parking to the back, and then we already have in our building code requirements for landscaping and landscaping in the parking lots as well. So we feel like that it will, by going ahead and moving forward, we'll already have these guidelines in place for the development that we know is coming for Midtown. In addition, I would point out that part of the drive behind this legislation, I believe, at least from the planning department standpoint, is that this council, as well as the planning department and the planning commission, we often talked about the need for infill development and smart growth. Developers have money that they can spend on development all around town. And I think that we've got to be forward-thinking and trying to drive developers into the areas where we want to see development. And Midtown is precisely that type of area. The increase in development rights that we've proposed are very reasonable. I think they're on just a little over 20% of the properties where there's an increase, and so over 70% of the properties where there's no increase, but just those design guidelines that I talked about. But those additional entitlements are in hopes that that will be attractive and that developers will use those funds that they have and be drawn into the Midtown area to do development instead of more subdivisions and more sprawl in Davidson County. And that was us trying to drive the conversation for a change instead of having to react to what developers show interest in, but hopefully drive their interest into the Midtown area.
Thank you.
Councilman Anthony Davis.
Thank you, Chair. So I definitely would agree with what Councilor Langster was saying. Out of the amendment options, I wouldn't want to do the individual property exemption kind of thing. Just seems like it doesn't make sense. It sounds like we're going to upzone this. I think you guys are all in agreement on that. I guess the only thing I'm left wondering is what seems to be the fear and what else will a deferral get us? Because it seems like we did this last meeting and the only thing we've gotten since then is just a few more emails and a little bit of opposition. But if the sponsors, if you guys want to move it through, I think we would support that. I guess what is the general fear of this whole thing and what's going to happen if we defer this again?
Planning want to?
Anyone have?
I don't know.
Anyone that hasn't been?
I'd like to respond if I can, Phyllis. I think it was sort of directed at what I had said. First of all, I want to say that everything that Doug just described to you in terms of going to an A version of the category, you can do without adding the FAR. So these two things are not mutually exclusive. You can go to the A or urban form of the zoning category without adding the FAR. Anthony, to answer your question, the reason for deferral, and I'll say this, if we can reach agreement on it, the other way to do it is just to suspend the rules for Tuesday night. I'm not looking to protract the process. I would like to have drafted and presented to you that amendment. That information was not available to me. I could only ask John Cooper to identify the parcels from a map that I had been provided. I didn't have the capability to go through and determine what would be a zero-sum FAR zoning category. So I couldn't produce that. If the planning department can produce that by tomorrow night, I'm fine to suspend the rules, and Councilor Allen and I have talked about that. I suggest a one-meeting deferral so that we have time to get that done, but if the planning department can get that done by tomorrow night, I'd support, and I think if we as a group say that's what we want to do, I think we could accomplish that, to suspend the rules and say, we will do a lateral, we'll move to the A version of the zoning category, which gets you all of those things. It gets you a build to line. It gets you a larger buildable footprint that puts everything in a sidewalk pedestrian oriented way. But it reserves the discussion about the additional FAR until we get design guidelines and historic preservation tools in place. Because again, I feel like when we start, the planning department can promise all they want to have those meetings, and I have no doubt they'll do that and they'll go through that process. But when we've given away all of our leverage, our ability to negotiate with those developers is going to be severely diminished. So that's why I think that we should do a zero-sum no FAR addition, but go to the A zone category at this time, and then come back with the FAR when we go through the UDO process. And however long that takes, I'm for the shortest time possible. If we can get that done in 90 days, I'd be for that. But obviously, that's going to be driven a lot by staff availability at the planning department.
Councilor Allen?
I would agree with, to some extent, to much of that statement. I think that the fear is, will the development community come to the table? And as I said, planning has done everything I have asked them and more, and they have given me a letter committing that they will make the UDO process happen. So to me, the one question remaining that I need to be able to answer to all those people that have sent me emails, some of whom are my constituents, is, am I sure I can get those people to the table? I would feel better if I had a letter in hand. I don't have that letter in hand yet. That's where I'm coming from. I think ultimately the upzone needs to happen, and I think we need to have design guidelines in place, and I think we've put all the language on the table that we can.
Any other comments? Do I have a motion? This is on the substitute, the bill is substituted.
Substitute first. The motion has been made and seconded for the substitute. So once that's done, then you can consider the bill as substitute.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So we have a motion. Is there a second? All right. A motion and a second. Those in favor? Yes. All right. Any opposed? All right. Now, on the bill as substituted. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? All right. By show of hands, those in favor of the bill as substituted, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. And those opposed, raise your hand. 1, 2. All right. Motion passes 5-2. Pardon? There were 3? Who's the third? Let me see your no hands again. 1, 2. Okay, I'm sorry. 5-3. Okay, so we still don't have Council Lady Dowell, so we will move, not take action on her bills, and I think that wraps us up here. All right, any other comments? Then we are adjourned. Thank you.